कि आज एक बहुत ही महत्वपूर्ण फैसला सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने दिया। उन्होंने ये इलेक्टोरल बॉन्ड की स्कीम कॉम्प्रिहेंसिवली स्ट्राइक डाउन कर दी है।
That was Senior Advocate Prashant Bhushan, the counsel for the plaintiffs in the Association for Democratic Reforms versus Union of India, touting the Supreme Court's judgment which declared the electoral bond scheme unconstitutional on 14th February 2024. The scheme was an issue entangled in the politics and the economics of the nation. It would hence grant the greatest clarity if the scheme, the scam, and the judgment were viewed using the lens of the Marxist typology of class analysis. Class struggle is the motor of history, and we would be remiss in not drawing a historical comparative analysis of the contemporary scheme with the familiar typology of forms of society in the Marxist tradition, those being feudal mannerism, trade guilds, and the capitalist social order. I have Meghna with me here. So Meghna, what are your insights on this?
Thank you for having me here. As you mentioned, class struggle is the motor of history. This concept asserts that the trajectory of human history is fundamentally shaped by the dynamics of class struggle and the antagonistic interdependencies of material interests between different social classes. Historical development can be explained via class analysis. Therefore, the progression from manorialism to capitalism can be understood through the lens of historical materialism.
You're a Stark of Winterfell. You know our words.
Winter's coming.
Winter is coming. In the popular web series Game of Thrones, Winterfell seems like an apt example of a manor. Ned Stark is the lord of the manor, and every person working within the boundaries of that manor are serfs who owe fealty to the lord of that manor. So everyone living within the manor is tied to that land and that lord. They cultivate the produce inside the manor and utilize it there itself. So it is safe to say that manors were self-reliant establishment. But was there trade taking place across the boundaries of these established manors?
Yeah, there was. So in the late medieval ages, there was a flow of capital where merchants used to trade with each other across boundaries. However, they were heavily taxed by the lords of other manors.
Sort of like an excise duty, you mean?
Yeah, precisely. But there was a change when warring among the established manors became the norm. So, what do you think is needed during the war?
Money and soldiers, obviously.
Yeah, and who do you think had the capability to provide the manors with the same?
The mercantile class, I presume. So basically, the merchants supplied the lords with money or soldiers in exchange for tax benefits. Isn't that a class transaction, albeit a transaction where only the ruling class and the mercantile classes benefited?
An added layer to this would be the antagonistic interdependent relationship created between the ruling and the mercantile class as against the proletariat, because there was an advantageous relationship between these classes at the expense of the working class. So, to reiterate what I've been saying is that the mercantile class since feudal times have furthered their capitalistic interests by funding the ruling class.
And because of some similarities between this feudal arrangement and the current scenario, adopting the method of class analysis would be an efficient one. Also, as Eric Olin Wright has pointed out, that class is a pervasive social cause and locating it grants a unique perspective into situations. So, to move ahead with our analysis, Tamanna would be delving further into the electoral bond saga.
In order to better set the stage, we will chart out the history of how electoral bonds manifested into what they are currently. Let's see where all this started.
सिस्टम में एक चेंज आया 1967 के जनरल इलेक्शंस के बाद, जब कांग्रेस पार्टी एक मेजॉरिटी तो जीत गई थी, पर उनकी सीट्स गिर गई थी। 5 साल में 361 से लेकर उनकी सीट्स हो गई थी 283 तक, क्योंकि उनको एक प्रो बिजनेस स्वतंत्रता पार्टी और हिंदू नेशनलिस्ट जनसंघ पार्टी से कंपटीशन आ रहा था। जनसंघ वही पार्टी है जिससे इवेंचुअली बीजेपी बनी। अब क्योंकि ये दोनों पार्टी प्रो बिजनेस थी, इस वजह से कंपनीज इन पार्टीज को डोनेशन कर रही थी, तो इंदिरा गांधी ने कॉर्पोरेट डोनेशंस को बैन ही कर दिया। अब कोई भी कंपनी पॉलिटिकल पार्टी को डोनेट ही नहीं कर सकती थी। अब इस समय कई यूरोपियन देशों में एक नया सिस्टम क्रिएट किया जा रहा था, जहाँ सरकार पॉलिटिकल पार्टीज को पैसा देती थी पॉलिटिकल कैंपेनिंग के लिए, पर इंदिरा गांधी ने ऐसा कोई सिस्टम इंट्रोड्यूस नहीं किया। तो बैन करने के बाद किसी भी पॉलिटिकल पार्टी के लिए कोई साफ रास्ता नहीं बचा जिससे वो पैसे कलेक्ट कर पाए। बस काले धन से ही सभी पॉलिटिकल पार्टीज काम चला सकती थी, पर क्योंकि कांग्रेस पावर में थी, ज्यादा पैसा ऑब्वियसली उनको ही मिलेगा। तो हमारे पॉलिटिकल सिस्टम में ब्लैक मनी ने बहुत अच्छी खासी जगह बना ली। पहले समझ
I'm not so fluent in Hindi, but from my primitive understanding of the situation on ground in 1973, Indira Gandhi banned all methods of funding a political campaign, and the only way to do so was through a backdoor method. Correct, Tamanna?
Yes, precisely. And our politicians love black as much as Modi loves Melanie.
The Foreign Contribution Regulation Act of the year 2010. Now, as per this Regulation Act, of course, foreign companies were not allowed to donate money to political parties. But the law was modified, and those foreign companies which have a substantial shareholding in an Indian company were allowed to contribute. This set the perfect premise for anonymous contributions.
Hold on a moment. What was that amendment? Just when they legalized it and established a transparent process, now the government is retracting this transparent method. An individual can now face a raid without even being given an opportunity to explain themselves. This fundamentally contradicts the principles of natural justice.
Not only that, Cheshana, parties on the other hand no longer had to disclose detailed records of contributions received through electoral bonds under Section 13A of the Income Tax Act, further making the process opaque.
पैसा क्लीन हो जाएगा और इसमें ट्रांसपेरेंसी के दो लिम्स होंगे कि जो देने वाला होगा उसके अकाउंट्स में रिफ्लेक्टेड होगा उसने कितने खरीदे हैं, और पॉलिटिकल पार्टी को भी ये डिक्लेरेशन देना पड़ेगा कि मुझे कुल योग टोटल कितना इलेक्टोरल बॉन्ड मिला है। ये एक सुधार है। इसमें और भी कोई सुझाव आते हैं इसको लागू करने के बाद तो उसको हम
Mr. Jaitley seems like he is opening a door to corruption. Developing on the case, on 2nd January 2018, the Ministry of Finance issued a notification that introduced the Electoral Bond Scheme. Under the scheme, certain branches of the SBI, State Bank of India, were authorized to sell electoral bonds. Bonds can be purchased in the denominations of 1,000 rupees, 10,000 rupees, 1 lakh, 10 lakh, and 1 crore.
They are to be sold for 10 days in January, April, July, and October each year. The identity of the purchaser remains anonymous to everyone except the SBI, who must record the buyer's Know Your Customer. Those are the KYC details. Only political parties which secured more than 1% votes in the last general elections to the House of the People or a legislative assembly are eligible to accept donations through electoral bonds. The political parties must encash the bond within 15 days of receiving it. After this period ends is when the funds are deposited into the Prime Minister's Relief Fund.
This amendment further facilitated engagement in corruption for prominent industrialists, resulting in widespread scandals. Here is senior advocate and Rajya Sabha MP Kapil Sibal's perspective on the matter.
Where is the scam? Where is the scam? Or where it is now, Modi ji, right in front of your eyes, your scam.
I concur with Kapil Sibal. In the realm of corporate philanthropy, some companies are going above and beyond, surpassing even their own net profits in donations. Take, for instance, Further Gaming and Hotel Services, which allocated over rupees 1,300 crore to political parties through electoral bonds. This figure is remarkable considering it exceeds six-fold their combined net profit spanning from 2019 to 2023.
That's astonishing. Furthermore, in a recent development following the disclosure of electoral bonds data for the year 2018 and 2019, both the Trinamool Congress and the JDU found themselves in a puzzling situation. They revealed that unknown donors had left 10 sealed envelopes at their offices containing a surprising discovery. Upon opening these envelopes, they uncovered bundles of electoral bonds, each valued at a staggering rupees 1 crore and a total of rupees 10 crore. The parties claimed ignorance regarding the identity of these donors, raising questions about the source of such substantial sums being donated to the political entities. So where is all this money coming from? And who exactly is behind these hefty contributions to political parties?
These scandals prompted the ADR and CPIM to challenge the legitimacy of electoral bonds before the Honorable Supreme Court, setting the stage for one of the most profound courtroom debates that we will guide you through. morning, Your Honor. I'm Advocate Prashant Bhushan, appearing for ADR, the petitioner.
I am Attorney General K.K. Venugopal, appearing on behalf of the Union of India.
Order, order. What is the agenda on the floor, advocates?
The petitioner pleads that the electoral bond scheme as is currently is unfavorable, as seen by the scam of Future Gaming and Hotel Services or the JDU and Trinamool Congress scam. We humbly plead before the Supreme Court to declare the current scheme of electoral bonds unconstitutional. Further, for the record, my client in no manner opposes the concept of electoral bonds, but only in their current form.
The respondents argue that the electoral bond scheme safeguards the privacy of donors and protects them from potential victimization by other political parties. Furthermore, we assert that the court lacks jurisdiction to address this matter as it pertains to economic policy.
Your Honor, our primary contention is that the current scheme stifles all prior efforts to bring transparency to political funding. It is important to look at previous efforts. The amendments made to various statutes like the RBI Act, the Income Act, the Representation of Peoples Act promote donor anonymity, as the electoral bonds do not bear the name nor identity of the donor. However, this is not what the primary goal was. Further, the petitioners submit transparency is further circumvented that by the political party encashing bonds neither have to disclose the worth of electoral bonds in a contribution report nor in their audit reports. What is important to note is that the electoral bonds are primarily meant to benefit corporations, citing that out of 3,000 crore donations through bonds, most have been in denominations of rupees 10 lakh or 1 crore. This is evident that this evidently points towards misuse of the scheme to funnel profits and benefit the parties. What do the respondents have to say about this?
The respondents argue that electoral bonds have been introduced so that the privacy of donors is protected and that they are not victimized by other political parties. Disclosures about names and identities of the donors under the electoral bond scheme would be in violation of their right to privacy. Additionally, Your Honor, with all due respect, the scheme falls within the realm of economic policy decisions in which the court must not ordinarily interfere. The situation where there is no state funding of elections, protection of a donor's identity must be allowed. Your Honor, the scheme would help in eliminating black money from elections. The objective of fighting black money is being achieved without compromising on transparency, as the donors have to adhere to the no customer banking norms when purchasing these electoral bonds. A flyby person who is not known cannot buy these bonds.
This is merely circumventing the question opposing counsel. That is a scarecrow argument. Finally, the petitioners submit that there is no link between fighting black money and the electoral bond scheme as previously stated. This scheme of electoral bonds has opened up another route of anonymous corporate funding through banking channels, in addition to the pre-existing cash route donation. And with this, we rest our case.
Today, on February 15, 2024, the court unanimously strikes down the Union's 2018 electoral bond scheme. The bench holds that the scheme violates the voters' right to information enshrined in Article 19(1)(a) of the Constitution. The court also directs that the sale of electoral bonds be stopped with immediate effect. SBI is directed to submit details of the electoral bonds purchased from April 12, 2019 till date to the ECI. This includes details of the purchaser as well as the political parties that the bonds are given to. Further, the court orders the ECI to publish the information shared by SBI on its official website within 1 week from the receipt of the information by March 13, 2024.
Since we have established historical materialism, we can now place the electoral bonds fiasco parallel to the class relationships during the medieval times. So, based on the facts Cheshana, Tamanna and Vanya discussed, it is a logical deduction that the institutions of government itself can be likened to the feudal ruling ruling class, which gains its power in form of capital from the mercantile class, which currently has evolved into firms, companies, and industries.
Yes, absolutely. Also, the aspect of political funding in exchange for tax exemptions remains the same in both epochs. Companies accruing money that is not taxed, basically black money, funds the ruling class. In exchange, the ruling class gives tax levies to the donors, and the donors further their capitalist interests without contributing the money for public welfare as is stipulated by the system. This cycle is an illustration of the following words of Eric Olin Wright. The deprivation of the propertyless in a capitalist system are not simply an unfortunate byproduct of the capitalist pursuit of profit. They are a necessary condition for that profit.
Yeah, and on that note, this quote by former Governor Raghurajam encapsulates our argument. The crooked politician needs the businessman to provide the funds that allow him to supply patronage to the poor and fight elections. The corrupt businessman needs the crooked politician to get public resources and contracts cheaply. And the politicians needs the votes of the poor and the underprivileged. Every constituency is tied to the other in a cycle of dependence, which ensures that the status quo prevails.
Yes, that makes so much sense. This showcases the antagonistic interdependence between different classes. The crooked politician and corrupt businessman have an advantageous relationship with each other at the expense of the poor and underprivileged.
Thank you for tuning in. That brings us to the end of this episode. Our podcast was a collective effort. Tapasya and Meghna contributed to the class analysis and its connection to the case story. Tamanna and Cheshana conducted thorough research and scripted the narrative of the electoral bond scheme, scam and judgment. Lastly, I, Vanya, handled the editing of this podcast.
Thank you for listening to the Youth Politicises.